Okay, so this is going to be really weird watching myself do this for you, but here it is. So, the thing about this story is it's not like a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's just like a collection of disconnected things that kind of happened in this house. So, you have to forgive that. And so, the beginning of the thing is that we move into this house. When we first moved back to North Carolina, we rented this house out in Ardmore while we were looking for the house that we live in now. At the time, your brother was brand new. You were about a year and a half, like going on 2, and your older brother, was about 4, or 3, 3.5. So we move into this house and everything's cool. Like, there's nothing spooky about this house. It's not like you'd go, as you pull up in the driveway, you're like, ooh, spooky. It was just like this mid 70s ranch house that was just like so boring. It was as spooky as dry toast, right? So we move in, everything's cool. The very first thing that I noticed in the house was, we set the entire basement aside for your toys so that the rest of the house wouldn't be littered with toys all the time. So your playroom was the basement. And so I would sit down there with you during the days while you guys played or watch movies or whatever. And, I'd go up and down to make you lunch or whatever. And right after we moved in, I started noticing that, like, I'd run up the stairs to get something, and when I hit the top of the stairs, like, if you've ever seen smoke just kind of roiling across the ceiling, right? Like, it's just the top foot or so of the ceiling, and just like smoke doing this. And sometimes I'd get to the top of the stairs, and it would just look like there was just this layer of smoke just sort of doing this on the ceiling, and I'd panic and I'd be like, I left the macaroni and cheese on the stove, and I'd go running into the kitchen. There would be nothing wrong, and then the illusion would be gone. And I never told anybody about this because, what was I going to say? And I kind of thought that maybe what was happening is because my blood pressure is so low that when I would run up the stairs, maybe my blood pressure was dropping out and creating this kind of illusion. But you'll need to remember this for later on in the story because it becomes relevant at the end of the story. So that was the first thing, is the illusion of the smoke on the ceiling when I'd come up the stairs. And then a little bit after that, I had this office right in the bedroom and the office, and I would work in the office sometimes while you guys were, napping or playing or whatever. And so the first thing that I started noticing in there was that I'd get up to leave the office and I'd come back and there'd be like lines of gobbledygook just written on the computer, and kind of like a cat walked back and forth across the keyboard. And I thought, well, we have cats, so that was a thing that might actually be happening. So I didn't think much of it, but then a while later, that stopped happening. But what would happen is that sometimes I'd get up and I'd go back to my computer, and other programs that I wasn't working on would be open. And this one time, I walked in there and there was a there was a program open on my screen that I didn't know was on my computer. It was your dad had been keeping his checkbook on my computer, and I didn't know, and he had this software that he was doing it, and so the checkbook was open on my computer when I came back with a cup of tea or something. And this created a little problem because when I started reading down through the checks, there were all these checks to this guy named Harry T, Harry T, period. And I called up your dad. I was like, who the fuck is this Harry T guy that you keep writing all these checks to? And it was the grocery store, Harris Teeter. So, so there was that kind of thing. And then, and I'm sorry they're disconnected. It's all just stuff that happened. So, another thing that happened that was kind of weird was like in the house, like there's this hallway, and my bedroom was here, and the office was there, and your bedroom was here, and so at night, I looked straight down the hallway from the bedroom, and there was this one night, you guys were all asleep, and your dad was asleep, and I was just laying awake because I couldn't go to sleep, and I was just sort of staring into the dark, and all of a sudden the lights clicked on, click, and I thought, because we were potty training Jimmy at the time, that maybe Jimmy was getting up to go to the bathroom, so I was listening to see if he needed help, and I never heard him come out of the room. I never heard, anything. And so after a little while, I got up to check. And when I got up to check, it wasn't the lights in the hallway that were on. The lights in the dining room had come on. And, you guys were all in bed. Your dad was asleep. So the other end of the hall was this dining room, and that's where the lights had come on. So I literally stood there and watched the lights come on in the middle of the night with my own little eyes. And so, of course, because for me, ghosts don't have kind of like a logical, it's hard for me to believe in them because there's no logical line through which it continues to make logical sense. So of course I'm thinking, oh shit, there's somebody in the house. And so I go to the kitchen and I get my two biggest meat knives, and I go and I search the whole house top to bottom, like behind the shower curtains, behind the curtains. I check all the windows and the doors. I don't find anything open. I don't find anything amiss. I don't find anything unlocked. Finally, I go to bed that night, and your dad gets up the next morning, and there are these two huge meat knives on my nightstand, and he's like, "What is going on here?" And so I had to explain about searching the house all night. And let's see. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to think of how these things go. The really big thing that happened while I was there was that in between my office and our bedroom, like, because there's the hall and there's the office and the bedroom, and right in between the office and the bedroom was this tiny little bathroom. Like, it was so small, I swear it probably was originally a closet. If you sat on the commode, your knees just about touched the wall on the other side, and you can hold your arms out straight out to your sides and touch the walls on either side. So it was tiny, tiny, tiny. And that's where I kept all my stuff so you guys wouldn't mess with it. And I had this retainer because I just got, had braces. And I went in one night to put my retainer in, and all three of you were downstairs with your dad. And so I go in, and my retainer's gone. And of course, being, a great parent like I am, I went straight to the top of the stairs because you guys were in the basement, and I yelled down, "Who took my retainer?" And everybody, your dad, you guys, "Oh no, nobody, we didn't touch it, we didn't touch it." And I said, "Okay, all right." So I go back to the bathroom, and I search really well, and I still don't find it. I go back to the top of the stairs, and I yell down the stairs and accuse you guys again, and everybody downstairs swears they're totally innocent, nobody ever touched it. So I go marching back to my bathroom again, and this time, I'm determined I'm gonna prove a point, right? So I get down on my hands and knees, and because the thing was so small, you could do this, and I run my hand across the floor like this, back and forth from one wall to the other, from one side to the other. So I've literally touched every piece of the floor. I empty everything out of the cabinets, feel the cabinets and the shelves. I put everything back in. I was so thorough this time because I was going to prove to you guys that I stuck my hand down like in the commode, like where it kind of goes like this, and I stuck my hand as far around that curve as I possibly could, just in case, like it fell in the commode and maybe it was just out of sight. Nothing. So now I am 100% positive. I go with my dripping wet hand to the top of the stairs, and I scream down the stairs at you guys because, remember, I'm an awesome parent, so I scream, "Whoever fucking took my fucking retainer, I fucking want it back right fucking now." And I slam the door, and I go storming back to my bedroom, and as soon as I walk in, I can see inside that little tiny bathroom, and the toilet lid is down. And now I know I didn't have the toilet lid down because my hand was still wet. Toilet lid was down, and my retainer was just sitting right in the center of the toilet lid. And so that was the biggest thing. But there was another night, and this is where you come into it, Robert, that your dad was on a business trip, and you guys were in bed asleep, so I was working in my office, and all of a sudden, like, one thing is, like, if you have kids, right, you can tell the difference between a scream that is like, "Oh, somebody took my toy and I'm mad about it," or "I fell down and I'm frustrated about it," and a scream that is like like somebody ripped my arm off, I'm seriously hurt. And so I'm working, and then all of a sudden I hear, Robert, it was the most blood-curdling scream I have ever heard. It scared me so bad. I swear, I came up over the top of my desk. I didn't even go around it. And I come running out into the hall, and you shoot out into the hallway, and I just grab you. You collapse into my arms. And if you've ever seen, like, a cartoon where, like, the cartoon character's knees are shaken so bad they can't stand up, that was the only time I ever saw that in real life, in my whole life, is when I caught you in the hallway. Your little knees shook so bad that you could not stand up. And I just held you, and you were not quite 3. or maybe you were about 3, and it was really hard to communicate with you because I could only get things in bits and pieces, and sometimes only in yes or no answers to questions. And so I got you to talk it out to what happened, and essentially you told me that you woke up and the old lady was sitting beside the bed watching you sleep. And so you watched her watching you sleep for a long time, and then at some point she realized that you could see her, that you were watching her back. And when she realized you were looking at her, she stood up and started to lean over you in the bed. And that was when you freaked out and came running out into the hall. And I asked you a whole bunch of questions like, was she going to hurt you? And you said no. You didn't. It didn't seem to you like she was out to hurt you, but she was leaning over. She leaned over you like she was going to give you a kiss, or it was just this whole thing. Like you just woke up and there she was watching you sleep, and then you watched her until she realized you were watching, and then she stood up and started to lean over you in the bed, and you came screaming out into the hall. That's where you come into it. I'm trying to think of. Oh, there's one more thing there's one more kind of big story while we lived there, and that was with Jimmy, and that is in the basement where I had set up your playroom. There was a fireplace. Now we didn't burn things in the fireplace because that is not a thing you do with toddlers. You don't want them to understand that you light fires anywhere in the house. And in order to keep you guys from playing with this fireplace, I had set up like a play kitchen in the basement with a refrigerator and a sink and a stove and the whole thing. So, um, uh, so I had set this whole kitchen up in front of the fireplace, like leaning up against it, so that you guys couldn't see it and wouldn't play with it. And the whole year we lived there, you guys didn't mess with it. And then one day I come downstairs, and little Jimmy, who is just over 4, he is standing. I mean, he's got the thing that I used to block the fireplace moved aside, and he's just standing there, just over it, looking real with his hands on his hips, just looking real serious, and shaking his head, And I said, Jimmy, and he looked up and he said, Mom, the nice lady said don't put any fires in there because the last time they put a fire in there, it made a real bad fire, like all up in here. He said he looked at the ceiling and went like this at the ceiling. And the a phrase like nice lady, that's a thing that I had taught you like with strangers, like, and I was like, oh, tell the nice man thank you for holding the door, tell the nice lady thank you for the lollipop, like that. So he tells me, nice lady says, don't put any fires in there. Now, remember the whole thing when I first moved in and I run to the top of the stairs and I started to see the smoke? That's where this becomes relevant. So nobody knew about that. But Jimmy goes, so the nice lady said to tell you don't put any fires in there because the last time they put a fire in there, there was a really bad fire all up in here. It goes like this, the ceiling. And I said, Jimmy, what nice lady? And he looks at me like I am so stupid, like, like, what nice lady do you think? Like, how stupid could you be? And he just says, the nice lady that lives in the basement. I mean, so that was, so that was my story, the story with Jimmy. And then that was about a year we'd lived there, and about that time we found the house we live in now, and we were moving out. And on the day we moved out, see, we had this babysitter, right, who came every week because your dad and I would go out together every week. We'd have our date, and we hired her to come over and watch you guys while we were getting the boxes in the truck and all of that kind of stuff. And so about when we got everything done and we were getting ready to load up and close everything down, she says, hey, there's something I have to ask you. And she said, I wanted to ask you before, but I really wanted this job, and was afraid you'd think I was crazy, and I didn't want you to fire me. But now that you're moving, like this, it can't hurt me at all. So I have to know, is your house haunted? And I said, why would you ask that? And she said, because when she would come to babysit, sometimes in the hallway, like the one that goes down to our bedroom and your bedroom, all in my office, all of that. She said when she would stand in the hallway sometimes, she would feel somebody push her from behind, like 2 open hands in the middle of her back, and give her a push. And she said that in addition to that, one other thing, See, we knew her boyfriend and we liked him fine, so we used to let them babysit you guys together so that they didn't, that they could spend the evening together even if she was babysitting. And she said one night after you guys were in bed, she was cuddled up on the couch with her boyfriend, and we had these bookshelves in the living room, right? And they had. She said she was looking up on the shelf, and there was this whole row of Shel Silverstein books, and she made the comment that she'd read all of the books except one, and that she should pull it down and read it sometime when she was here. And she said, right at the moment she said that, with her boyfriend there, he saw it too, there was this big crash. All of the books on the shelf that were standing up fell over, except that one that she said she had not read and wanted to read. And that was all of them, they just went crash. And then just that one was still standing up. So that's the story of the house on Lehigh Street that we lived in when you were a little baby. Thanks. I hope that you enjoy the story and it's cool. Bye.